He wakes up from sleep and finds 2 books and a dagger on the table in front of him. After that, he leaves the house and begins to discover his abilities, learning that he has the power to control water. Suddenly, he is transported to a strange place and says to himself, "Where am I now?" Then a wizard appears before him. The wizard says to him, "You are Ryo." When Ryo replies, "Yes, it's me," the wizard becomes very happy, saying that no one with such potential has appeared for a long time. Then the wizard tells Ryo the painful truth, telling him that he died in an accident. Ryo remembers his accident and actually believes his words. Ryo says to him, "So, I'm dead? My life is over?" The wizard replies, "No, you didn't die. You exist in another world." He tells him, "You are free to do whatever you want because you are not charged with any mission." Ryo is surprised, thinks for a bit, and says to him, "Honestly, I want to live a quiet life in this new world." The wizard explains to him that he will return him to a magical world called Vi, where only 20% of humans have magical skills. He tells him that he can use the water element because it is the only one suitable for his personality. When the wizard found out that Ryo wanted a quiet life, he decided to send him to a forest called Rondo and pointed to a small house, telling him that this house has enough food for 2 months. The first thing Ryo found when he entered the house was something like a deep freezer containing food. Of course, the wizard told him he did this to protect him from monsters. In the new house, Ryo began reading books about monsters and learning about them. He was surprised that the language of the book was very strange. Thing was that he could read it easily. Ryo went outside the house and began training in water magic. He believed that magical power appears from imagination without speaking. After that, he returned to the house and began filling a basin with water, but the water was warm. He wished it were hot so he could bathe. He went out to gather some wood to light a fire but failed and couldn't find any. He became very tired and we see him falling to the ground from exhaustion. Then he brought a plate of water and tried to freeze it, but failed the second time. He said to himself that it was difficult and that he must discover how to make ice. He began to focus and imagine the water particles, asking himself if he could bond the hydrogen and oxygen. In a moment of intense concentration, he actually managed to freeze the water and discovered that he could shape it into any form he wanted. After that, he used it to light the wood. He was of course indescribably happy. He returned to the house and took a warm bath as he wanted, feeling very comfortable. His first day was successful, and he began to think about using the same method to heat the water next time. He said to himself that magic in this world is very useful. The next day, he started eating the food that was in the fridge, but remembered that the food would run out after 2 months. He told himself that he must hunt before the food runs out. He said that the dagger is not enough for hunting, and that he must learn offensive magic. He went out to train again and made a water ball, which was the first offensive spell he succeeded in. He was of course very happy with it, but the power of the attack was weak. He expected this but didn't let it bother him, saying he had other ideas to develop his magic. Ryo then tried to concentrate water to make a fountain and narrowed the opening to make its jet fast, but when the water came out, it didn't reach the tree, and the hit was very weak. He got a little upset and went back to the wizard, asking him how to use magic properly. The wizard told him that the basis of magic is imagination and that he must imagine the goal clearly. With time, he will gain great experience. Ryo returned to the forest and began using magic as the wizard told him, feeling a great improvement at that moment. He returned to the house and used a reverse spell to fill his basin with hot water. The next day, he began training on forming ice from the air and actually succeeded, but he was forming it very slowly. He said, "At least it's good that I was able to start and form ice," which encouraged him to continue and develop it over time. He actually managed to make an ice spear, but he couldn't throw it a long distance. He realized that launching ice over a long distance is harder than launching water, but he decided to train on it until he mastered it, just as he did with the water balls. He tried again to throw ice arrows and failed again, but he exerted great effort to the point where he felt he was about to faint. He returned to his house and wanted to light a fire, but the sun wasn't out like before, which was a new problem he faced. He decided to look for a solution. After days of training, he succeeded in forming ice arrows, but unfortunately their impact was still weak. After that, Ryo decided to go on an adventure into the forest. He took his spear with him and later noticed huge monster tracks near the river. He also found a stone on the riverbank that he could use to light a fire. He was very happy that he could do this even if the sun wasn't out. He began gathering medicinal herbs until a big disaster appeared. A huge monster appeared behind Ryo. Ryo felt it, and when he turned around and saw it, it was a wild boar. Fear literally paralyzed Ryo in his place. The boar immediately attacked him, but Ryo remembered the accident in which he died last time and moved at the last moment. the boar attacked him again, and Ryo couldn't move due to fear. But he said, maybe I can use magic from where I am. He used an ice spell in the boar's path, making it slip. Then he launched ice arrows, making the boar run into them, and it was killed. Ryo couldn't believe that he was able to finish it off. After that, Ryo returned to his house and began preparing the boar's hide to make clothes from it. He also succeeded in lighting a fire inside the house without needing the sun. After that, he took the monster book and began reading in it. He discovered that the boar he killed was one of the very weak monsters, which made him understand that the book he read was only for beginners. However, on the last 2 pages of the book, it was written that they were a special edition, and he read in it about dragons. It said that any dragon could easily destroy an entire city. The book said that if you see a dragon, run away quickly. He saw that what was written made sense because he could really die if he met one of them. After that, he saw a monster named Akuma. This monster literally looked exactly like a demon. There was a note next to it saying that no one should ever wish to meet it. At that moment, Ryo felt that this world was very large and full of dangerous monsters. The next day, he took off his clothes and went to the forest, becoming exactly like Tarzan. He began picking and tasting fruits, wearing the boar outfit he had prepared. On his way, a giant bird appeared before him. The bird immediately attacked him, but Ryo managed to escape from it. He noticed that this bird was very strong and could easily cut trees with its claws and beak. He began to escape from it, trying to stop it using ice slabs. He said that this bird likely uses wind magic in its attacks, but its primary weapons are its claws and beak. It was very difficult for him to escape from it. He tried to hit it with water arrows, but the bird dodged them all. When it got close, Ryo made an ice barrier to protect himself. The bird crashed into it and fell to the ground. Ryo approached it and aimed his weapon at it, but the bird flew away quickly as if it thought Ryo would kill it. Ryo saw a wound in the bird's eye, and at that moment the bird stayed away from his path and walked away. After that, Ryo fell to the ground and said to himself, "This quiet life is harder than I imagined." Night fell upon him while he was lost in the forest due to his escape from the bird. He began to move, thinking he was on the right path, but he saw a lake. Strangely, he found a headless knight and next to him a horse. This was a great shock and scared him greatly. The next day he continued walking in the forest and began hunting other monsters using his ice arrows. He also hunted fish using his spear. He returned to his house, stored a lot of fish, and began training with ice slabs. Then he went to the river and dived into its depths. There he encountered a giant octopus that expelled him from the water. Then he used water magic to cut rocks, which made him very happy. He said to himself that if he increased the hardness of the ice, he could use it instead of grinding tools. At that moment he felt that he had begun to master magic quite well. He returned to the headless knight he had seen before and learned that his name was Dalhin. Ryo said, since the book didn't mention this monster, it must be very strong. But he tried to encourage himself not to be afraid and attacked it. The monster attacked him with many strikes, but not a single hit landed on him. On the contrary, the monster hit him with a strong blow that would have finished him off. But Ryo dodged it at the last moment. After that, Ryo tried to freeze it, but the monster dodged his strike. Then the monster hit him again, knocking him to the ground. Ryo felt extremely tired and said to himself that there was no hope of defeating it. The monster manifested a water sword for him. Ryo was very surprised that the monster was giving him the sword. Before the monster disappeared, it told him that he must master using the sword well. After that, Ryo went out to the forest again and encountered the bird for the second time. He saw the wound in its eye, but the bird's color had changed. He said to himself that this bird seemed to have evolved. Then the bird launched wind magic at him. Ryo succeeded in repelling its attack using his ice barrier magic. We see that the bird did not give up and destroyed all of his barriers. It began to attack him, and Ryo was defending and escaping at the same time. After that, Ryo tried ice arrows, but not one hit it. The bird used a loud sound as a form of magic and attacked Ryo with it, but Ryo managed to dodge the attack. After that, the bird tried to lift him with its claws, but Ryo repelled the attack using his sword. Then the bird appeared behind Ryo again and used wind magic on him. Ryo managed to repel its attack. After that, the bird flew to a very high altitude and prepared for a new attack. It immediately attacked Ryo, but Ryo managed to dodge it with his sword with force, knocking it to the ground. After that, Ryo approached the bird and said to himself, "You came to take revenge because of the wound in your eye." He said to it, "Thanks to the fighting between you and me, I was able to become stronger and develop my skills." Then he pulled a part of the sword from his body and said to it, "I know you evolved to come take revenge on me, but now I will finish you off with respect." After that, he stabbed the bird until he killed it. Suddenly, a dragon flying in the sky appeared and landed in front of Ryo. Ryo was shocked for the second time when the dragon spoke to him. The dragon said that it had been a long time since it used telepathy and wasn't sure if it still worked. Rio was surprised and asked, "What does telepathy mean?" The dragon asked him, "Did you meet an evolved bird a little while ago?" He said, "Yes, I met it, and unfortunately I just finished it off." The dragon smiled, was very happy, and said, "God bless you." He saw the sword with Rio and told him that the weapon he had was made by a genie. He said, "Since the genie gave you the weapon, it means you did something deserving of that honor." Rio wanted to ask him many questions, but the dragon said it had to leave. Before it flew away, Rio asked the dragon its name, and it said its name was Lin. After that, the dragon left him and walked away. Rio stood in his place and said, "I never imagined I would talk to a dragon one day, but it seems that strange things can happen normally in this world." After that, we go to the wizard who met Rio, who was thinking. He said, "Clearly I forgot something." He said that Rio has a hidden ability and was shocked when it was discovered that the last person who had the same ability was his daughter, who disappeared into the world again about 10 years ago. But Rio's ability was different. The ability was that he would remain a young man for his entire life and never grow old. After that, Rio went to the sea looking for seafood, but what he saw was ugly because he found a destroyed ship and 2 soldiers lying on the ground. It was clear that they had been attacked by a coastal monster that was in the water and that broke the ship. Suddenly, he heard the sound of someone breathing. Then we go to Rio's house. One of the soldiers woke up. He was carrying a locket very dear to him. He looked around and said, "Where am I?" He went out to explore the place, and suddenly Rio appeared behind him. The soldier was surprised and said to himself, "What exactly should I tell this man happened?" But he introduced himself, saying his name was Abel, and thanked Rio for saving him. Rio said, "I didn't do anything. All I did was bring you here, and you were the only one I found alive." Abel said to him, "We were smugglers, but I don't want you to worry about us." Rio was surprised that they were smugglers. After that, Abel felt hungry, and they both ate together. After that, Rio introduced himself to him. Then Abel asked him, "Don't you have other clothes?" But Rio didn't have any fabric thread and didn't even know how to sew. He thought about asking him, saying, "Maybe you can buy yourself clothes," but he stopped and said he must not have money, because if he had money, he would have bought everything for himself. He felt that he had made Rio uncomfortable. Rio, of course, as we know, didn't know any nearby cities or anyone at all. He let Abel know that Rio hunts his own food. He asked him about the dagger he had, so Rio said, "I use this dagger for self-defense and cleaning the animals I hunt." After that, he showed him that he could use water magic. Abel was of course surprised by Rio's magical ability and told him that in the central provinces, only half of the people can do that like you, but he wasn't one of them. As they were walking, Abel asked Rio, "Don't you have a magic staff?" Rio replied, "No." Abel felt that he had been hasty in his question and became 100% sure that Rio was very poor and miserable. After that, Abel said to him, "Let me walk first so that if something happens, I know how to handle it." Rio refused, but Abel insisted on repaying the favor since he saved him. In the end, Rio agreed and said, "I will rely on you then." After that, they reached the shore, but the corpses that were there had disappeared. They searched the place and said maybe the sea took them. Of course, Abel said that if Rio hadn't saved him, he would have disappeared just like them. Rio learned that Abel was a lucky person. After that, Abel asked Rio not to call him sir anymore because he doesn't like formalities, especially since Rio was the person who saved him. Rio said, "I thought you were older than me, but you're right. From now on, I'll call you Abel." Abel thanked him and said, "In that case, I consider you my friend and buddy, and you're competent." Rio's happy because this was the first person he befriended in the new world. After that, Abel finished searching the ship but didn't find the thing he was looking for. Rio asked him, "What will you do now?" Abel said he wanted to meet his friends and that a new city called Leon would be a good start for him. The problem was that Abel had drifted very far to the south, which made Rio think that to reach the city of Leon, which is in the north, he needed to walk a long distance. Abel understood that he needed to prepare himself well for the journey. Then after that, he said to Rio, "What do you think about coming with me?" Rio was of course surprised by his request and accepted. Abel felt that his request had surprised Rio, and then he said to him, "I want you to think about it. I need you to help me, and I don't even know the way to the city of Leon. That's why I want you to guide me." Rio agreed and said, "Let me just prepare my things first, and we'll start our journey tomorrow." Of course, Abel was very happy that Rio agreed and shook his hand with all his strength. When they returned to the house, Rio said to himself, "After I arranged my life to live here in complete quiet, it seems my life is going to change and become exciting." After that, he went and said to Abel, "I have an important errand now because there is someone dear to me I want to bid farewell to before we leave." Abel was surprised because he knew Rio lived here alone. After that, Rio went to the genie wizard and told him that he would be absent from this place starting tomorrow. He thanked him for everything he had learned from him and said, "I was able to live and adapt well here in the forest because of you." After that, he requested to fight the genie one last time, saying, "I will fight you with all my strength." Indeed, the fight between them began. The blows were very fast and after a while of fighting, Rhea was very tired, so the genie approached him and brought out a huge water ball in front of him. When Rio approached it, he found something like a beautiful combat uniform inside. Rhea was very happy and said to him, "Is this for me?" The genie said, "Yes," and dressed him with it proudly. After that, the genie disappeared completely. The next day, Abel was waiting for Rio until he came out wearing the new outfit and said to him, "Let's go, let's start the journey." As they were walking, Rio looked back at his house one last time, knowing he wouldn't return to it again, and began a new journey. After that, during their journey, they encountered a wild monster. At that moment, Abel said to him, "Leave it to me, I'll finish it off." He immediately drew his sword and struck the monster with a single blow that finished it off immediately. Rio was surprised by Abel's great strength and skills. Abel replied to him saying, "These are combat skills, and wizards don't know anything about them." He said that these skills are used by duelists and fighters. Rio immediately understood that Abel was a very strong fighter. After that, night fell upon them, and they slept in a tree. The next day, they continued their journey until they reached a lake, but they noticed 2 savage lizards there. Abel said to him that this type is very strong and not easy to defeat, so it's better to take the forest path instead of the lake. But while on their way through the forest, Rio sensed their movement and knew they were coming for them too. Abel decided to start preparing himself, and Rio said to him, "I will also use my magic and fight with you." Abel didn't know how Rio would fight with him without a magic staff. But Rio suddenly, when he used ice arrows, managed to kill a large number of lizards. After that, he alerted him that another group was approaching them. After they finished them off, Abel asked Rio, "What spell did you use?" Rio said, "I used a water spell to produce ice arrows." Abel was shocked and said, "How did you launch 4 arrows at once?" "That's absolutely unnatural." Rio said to him, "I can use water magic very well." Abel was shocked by Rio's great strength and said to him, "All right then, boss, I'll rely on you. Let's continue our journey." Before they left, Abel wanted to drink water, so Rio used his magic and produced a cup full of water for him. Abel was astonished for the second time and said to him, "What are these amazing abilities?" Rio said to him, "My magical ability depends largely on imagination." After that, we see Abel using a metal coin to determine the direction of the path, and they began moving towards the city of Leon. Rio was amazed because it was the first time he had seen a metal coin. Abel began to explain, telling him that the coin is called a florin and is used in the kingdom of Nitri, of which the city of Leon is a part. Rio really liked the name of the kingdom and asked Abel, "Is this kingdom one of the central provinces?" Abel said yes, it is one of 3 major states. The other 2 are the state of Z and the Han-Leo Union, and they border an open area with rocks. Abel deflected a surprise attack with a stone and split it in half. Rio immediately made an ice barrier to defend them, but was surprised that they were surrounded by many stones around them. Abel said, "Clearly, we have entered a golem's nest, boss." He asked Rio to stay put and said, "Leave this round to us," and immediately went out to attack them. He attacked one of them with a strong blow, but the monster wasn't affected at all. Abel said, "There's no use." Rio decided to try attacking himself and made an icy wall consisting of 10 layers. He struck the stone monsters with it, and Rio succeeded in finishing them all off. Abel was, as usual, astonished because every time he is surprised that Rio is much stronger than before and possesses great ability. After that, Rio said to him, "I will repeat this spell on the remaining monsters and finish them off." But when they went to one of the monsters, they found it not moving, and inside it, they found a strange magic stone. They realized that this was their loot, and they decided to collect the magic stones found in the golem. After that, during their journey, they found a hippopotamus in front of them, but they saw a group of savage birds coming to attack. The hippopotamus then released very strong sound waves that managed to finish them all off. Rio was surprised by the abilities the hippopotamus possessed and realized that the monsters here possessed strange abilities that he was seeing for the first time in his life. When they sat together eating dinner at night, they kept talking about the strange abilities the hippopotamus had and how it managed to nullify the magical power of the birds that attacked. After that, Abel told Rio that there is a magical labyrinth in the city of Leon containing monsters that possess abilities exactly like the hippopotamus. Rio was very happy and excited that the first thing they would do when they arrived there was enter this magical labyrinth. After a few days of walking, they reached a huge mountain range. Rio said that after crossing these mountains they would find a human settlement. Abel was surprised and asked him, "How do you know, and how are you so sure?" Rio began to think and said to him, "I won't hide it from you." We learned that when Rio spoke with the dragon earlier, it told him a lot of information about this world. He decided to keep the secret to himself and said to him, This information is above the level of human capabilities and is difficult to explain to you now. Suddenly they heard a strange sound and prepared to fight, but what appeared to them was a very strong flying monster named Griffin. They saw this bird descending upon them from the sky at high speed. Abel entered a state of panic, became very scared, and almost had a nervous breakdown. But Rio quick-witted threw a large piece of meat into the air. He then acted like and mimicked the griffin bird. Indeed, it jumped, took the 2 pieces in its beak and flew away from them. The 2 finally caught their breath after the bird left them and walked away. They said they would have died if they had fought it because it was very strong. After that, they continue their journey, and Abel tells Ryo that it's been over 100 years since any human has ever seen that hippopotamus or the griffin bird before. He realizes that the high mountains they crossed were what protected humans from them. This made Rio think that the savage birds the hippopotamus attacked came from the north, meaning their nest was close by. Their guess was correct because after a while they saw a number of them eating a dead monster. Rio wanted to fight them, but Abel said to him, "We need at least 20 experienced adventurers to be able to face and defeat these strong birds." Rio said to him, "Aren't we going to stop being cowards? We can't keep avoiding fights like that. We must fight any monster we find to gain great experience." Abel agrees with his opinion and says to him, "Well, wait until they land on the ground and I'm ready to attack with you." Rio immediately, without preamble, charges forward and begins chanting a water spell. He summoned 4 ice spears and launched them into the bird's wings. Abel took advantage of this opportunity and struck one with a strong blow from his sword, killing it. But after that, 2 more birds came from afar. Ryo used the ice spears again and attacked them, knocking them to the ground. Suddenly, a second group of wyvern birds reached them, but this time we see Abel excited and ready to fight. Ryo is surprised how Abel isn't scared for the first time. Abel says to him, "Sooner or later we must face and defeat these birds. Our chance is now to finish them off." He immediately charges at them with all courage. After they finish them off, they collect the magic stones that fell from them and continue their journey. After that, Rio and Abel continue their journey, asking, "Are we going to encounter wyvern dragons next on our way?" We note that Rio has no problem facing these monsters again, but Abel doesn't want to take risks and says to him that it's fine. He says he is very happy, especially since they now have a bag full of magic stones and can sell it for a good price and earn a lot of money. They continue their path towards the north, but Abel didn't know exactly where they were going. Rio thought they had entered the Deputy Empire, but Abel said that the empire is located north of the kingdom, meaning they likely haven't entered it. Rio was very happy and felt a strange comfort, not because he dislikes the empire, but because its name is very silly and he didn't like it. In the end, they glimpsed a path leading to a city named Rio was very excited at that moment, saying, "Finally, I will sleep in a bed like normal people." Abel was surprised that Rio seemed to love comfort. He had thought he was like a caveman who knew nothing but fight. Abel begins to tell Ryo about the city named Keti and begins to explain what the food there is like, saying that the food tastes great and doesn't take long. They arrive at the city, and the first thing they do is enter a restaurant to eat. There, Abel begins to explain to Ryo about the Adventurers Guild and suggests that he register as an adventurer because he is very strong. He says that the guild card also works as an ID card, and through it he can enter any place in the state for free. Rio liked the idea, especially since when they entered the city, Abel had to pay the guards money to let Rio enter with him. Abel also tells him that the guild's advantages include being able to exchange magic stones and monster loot, but he says one must be an alchemist to benefit from these things. Rio, of course, loves alchemy and is very interested in it. He begins to think seriously about becoming an adventurer. After that, the waiter brings the food, which is curry and rice. Ryo is surprised that this world also has food like the world he was in before. He remembers an anime he saw about isekai where the protagonist struggled to get food. But in this world, food is available normally and very easy to obtain. Of course, Ryo is happy that food is easy in this world and begins to eat it like a sheep in large quantities. Next day, when he meets Abel, he keeps talking about the food he ate yesterday and its sweetness to the point that Abel is surprised and says to him, "Hey kid, haven't you ever eaten sweet food in your life before, or what?" After that, they return to continue their journey and walk through pastures and agricultural lands until they reach the outskirts of a new city named Leon. First thing they do when they reach the gate is that the guard there is surprised to see Abel because there was news that he had disappeared. Abel doesn't have time to explain, so he tells the guard that Rio is the one who saved him. The guard thanks Rio greatly and greets him enthusiastically but asks him to pay an entrance fee since he isn't registered as an adventurer. Abel pays for him to let him pass for the second time. The guard welcomes Abel again and asks him what he plans to do now. Rio notices that Abel seems famous and loved in the city. They then go to the Adventurers Guild. On the way, Abel tells him that normally, anyone who registers starts from rank F, But since he is an old adventurer, he might use his connections to have Ryo start from rank E or even D. He says that the rank matters, and the higher the rank, the more difficult the quests become. Abel doesn't see that Ryo needs to do difficult quests, because they will earn a lot from selling the magic stones, to the point that he is afraid to sell them all at once, because he knows no one will believe he collected that quantity of stones. Ryo decides to consult the guildmaster first. As soon as they enter the guild, everyone inside is surprised and happy to see Abel alive. Many people surround him, so Ryo decides to go out for a walk to not crowd the place. While walking, he meets a dwarf girl who is surprised by his clothes and asks him if he is a follower of the Fairy King. He is surprised because he doesn't know who the Fairy King is that she is talking about. But the girl was in a hurry, so she left without explaining and said she hoped to meet him again soon. He goes out to look for Abel and brings him back inside the guild. He introduces him to the people and tells them that he is the one who saved his life. Everyone thanks him. After everyone returns to their work, he takes Ryo to the registration clerk to start the procedures and tells them to register him as an adventurer from rank D. The clerk, of course, is surprised and tells him that she has never seen anyone from the Crimson Blade faction recommended before. This means that Ryo is a very important person to Abel. She agrees, of course, but tells him that he must also undergo a physical test. At that moment, Abel requests to meet the guildmaster. Indeed, the clerk takes them to the meeting room, and there they meet the guildmaster, whose name is Hugh. As soon as he sees Abel, he runs to him and hugs him, happy that he has returned. Guildmaster is surprised that Abel managed to return alive after crossing the mountain, which for him is something very difficult. Abel says to him, "That's enough to prove that Ryo is strong, and he is the reason we made it this far." Hugh immediately agrees to raise his rank. Before they finish talking, Abel's old team enters. As soon as Lynn sees Abel, she falls to her knees in shock, not believing she is seeing him again. He apologizes to them and says that without Ryo, he would be dead. He asks them to thank him. "Honestly, I've never seen anyone as decent and strong as Abel." Hugh tells them to take their time and talk among themselves and tells the registration clerk, Nina, to prepare Ryo's registration papers. Ryo tries to leave with the guildmaster, but Abel calls him and tells him to wait until he finishes his registration. The guildmaster thanks and says that Ryo must be wondering how famous Abel is. He explains to him that the Crimson Blade faction is practically the strongest faction in the village, and Abel's disappearance affected everyone. Here Ryo asks the guildmaster, "Are you going to register me directly in this rank?" He says yes, of course. He says to him, "I know Abel is strong, but it's impossible for him alone to defeat the wyvern birds. I am confident that you played a big role in helping him defeat them." They take the office again, and there Nina comes with the papers and begins asking him about his abilities and his level. She asks him if he has ever descended into magical labyrinths before, but Ryo says no. She tells him they have monthly training classes and asks him if he would like to register for them. Of course, Ryo registers. She tells him that the next class is at 9 to 0 in 2 days. He agrees and the time is set for tomorrow morning. He is surprised that there are clocks. She also tells him that there is a clock tower in the city square. He later finds out that he has no place to stay, so she tells him that he can stay in the guild's dormitory for 300 days. After she finishes the papers, she gives him the card and has him place his hand on the device that displays his data. Ryo goes with Abel to sell the stones and get the money. Abel intends to buy Ryo clothes and a magic staff. Of course, Ryo thanks him and says, "Why are you insisting on buying a magic staff?" Abel says, "Any wizard like you must have a magic staff." Ryo says to him that he is comfortable without it and doesn't want it, and he has a small sword that he is satisfied with. Abel, of course, sees it and laughs at the sword, saying, "This is a dagger, not a sword." But Ryo insists that it is a sword and knows how to use it very well. After that, Ryo discovers from Abel's talk that the day is 24 hours, the week is 7 days, and the month is 30 days, just like on planet Earth. He begins to suspect that someone from Earth was reincarnated here and changed many things in this world. Abel comes and tells him that there is a welcome party for him and that he must go because he is the guest of honor. They go to the party, drink and laugh all night. The next day, Ryo wakes up tired and arrives home. He meets Nina, who tells him, "You look like you had a fun night." He arrives home and Nina opens the door to 2 people sitting in the room. She introduces them to Ryo. Their names are Nils and Otto. Before she leaves, she reminds him that he has a training class tomorrow. After she leaves, Nils tells him that Nina is beautiful, and they keep joking and laughing with him until Nina returns with a new adventurer who looks young. When they ask him, they learn he is 16 years old. We learn that his parents died, and he decided to become an adventurer. She tells them to welcome him and tells Ryo to bring him with him when he comes to training tomorrow. At the same time, Abel is telling his team about what he saw with Ryo, and how he can use magic without a magic staff, and how he managed to kill the dragon with his ice magic power. Lin doesn't believe him and says it's impossible because magic requires a certain distance, but Abel is adamant and says, I saw it with my own eyes, and Ryo possesses great power. Ryo says that the only one who was that strong was the Hellfire Wizard, but everyone thinks he is just a legend because no one has seen him before. They begin to worry if Ryo really possesses such great power, and say that he might join the Empire in the future because Abel reassures them and says that Ryo hates the Empire's name very much. At the same time, Ryo was laughing and joking with his new colleagues, happy that after being lonely, his life had changed and he now had friends. We then go to the school where Ryo is training to explore the magical labyrinths. Over the next 5 days, they learned how to explore them, and their trainer decided that the next day they would descend into their first real magical labyrinth. Ain was very nervous and couldn't believe they were finally going down, but Ryo told him to calm down because that anxiety would make him break down before even entering. Before they moved, the trainer decided to answer the students' questions. Ryo asked him if there was a way to go directly to any level of the magical labyrinth. The trainer was very pleased with this smart question and said that some magical labyrinths have this feature, but they are located in the southern provinces and it isn't available in the labyrinth they are about to enter. The trainer said he had heard rumors about people who can teleport to any floor in a magical labyrinth, but he had no details at all about the subject. Ain was impressed that Ryo knew about such things and was surprised how Ryo was at this level and knew all this information. A little later, they finally arrived at the magical labyrinth named Leon, which is located in the middle of the city, or rather the city was built around this labyrinth. They learned that every year the number of monsters inside increases greatly, a phenomenon called the Roar of the Depths. Sometimes monsters emerge during this period and reach the surface, which is why there are double walls around the city to prevent the monsters from entering. Ryo understood that the outer wall protects from external attacks, and the inner wall protects from monsters emerging from the labyrinth. We see Ain as usual worried about the Roar of the Depths and felt it was a huge catastrophe. But the trainer reassured him, saying it happens every few years and the probability of it happening now is very low, so beginners like him shouldn't be afraid at all. Note. The trainer also said there is a guild office at the gate, and usually when someone enters the labyrinth, their name and entry time are recorded. But since they are registered in the course with him, they will enter immediately. Again, Ryo noticed Ain was tense, so he asked him to take a deep breath and calm down a little, which Ain did. When they descended to the first floor, the trainer asked everyone to be calm because there are no dangerous monsters on the first floor, and they can explore the place freely, but they shouldn't go far from the entrance. We see Ryo and Ain decided to walk together. The first monster that appeared before them was an ant. Ryo immediately used his ice magic and pinned the ant to the ground, leaving the final blow to Ain so he could sever its neck. He immediately attacked it with his sword and finished it off. Indeed, the matter ended peacefully on the first day. So, they decided to celebrate with Ryo for completing the course and his first experience in the magical labyrinth. Everyone was, of course, happy that Ryo and Ain defeated an ant on their first attempt. Here, Ain told them that Ryo left the final blow for him, but Ryo said, "Hey, don't exaggerate so much. You're the one who finished it and severed its neck." Of course, they weren't interested in the details of killing the monster in the labyrinth. The most important thing was the magic stones they collected inside. Ain wished he could go deeper into the magical labyrinth, but he wasn't comfortable doing it alone. Ryo invited him to come with him, but he was surprised that there were savage ants on the first floor, which didn't make sense based on what they were taught. One of their colleagues said that indeed, the first floor is supposed to have bats, but they heard that savage ants had appeared on the first and second floors in recent months. Rifta's Ryo didn't understand why this was happening, and suddenly Abel appeared behind them and said the reason is that these ants can dig and easily reach the first floor. Ryo was uncomfortable that Abel was interfering in the beginner's conversation, so he said to him, "I was just helping you so you know how things are going." He began welcoming Ryo's roommates. We see Ryo's roommate, Nils, is surprised when he learns this is the swordsman, and immediately greets him, saying he is very happy to see him. Abel gives them advice before leaving, which is that they shouldn't exhaust themselves and that the adventurer's safety is more important than anything else. From or did this? Ryo asked him what he was doing in the guild hall at this late hour. He said the mission they were on took longer than expected and they just returned now. Suddenly, Abel's female teammates appear and tell him to stop running away from them, and if he continues like this, they will report him to the guildmaster. He is surprised and tells them he was just acting as a role model for the beginners and giving them some advice. Suddenly, his teammate named Warren grabs him and lifts him so he doesn't escape from him again. But one of the girls approaches Ryo and keeps looking at him, and suddenly her friend calls her and apologizes to Ryo, saying they have to go to the guildmaster and take Abel with them. Ryo says, "Let them do what they want, I'll meet them later since he is their swordsman." Everyone is amazed by Ryo's beauty, which is like an angel's, but Ryo's colleague Nils is still amazed by Abel and keeps thinking about him. The next day, we see Ein ready and very excited to enter the magical labyrinth. They finally reach the first magical labyrinth, and Ryo uses his ice ability and easily defeats the first wolf. Ein uses his sword ability and finishes off a second wolf. Ein is surprised by a wolf that suddenly appears behind him and is about to attack him, but Ryo uses his magic and moves him away quickly. Ein gets angry and finishes it off himself. After that, Ein thanks Ryo for his help, and Ryo notices that Ein's sword style is very similar to Abel's. Ryo remembers Abel saying that his teacher was a very strong adventurer named Kibo, who studied at a prestigious academy in the royal capital and used a famous style called the harem style. Ryo is convinced that Ein will become as strong as Abel once he masters the basics. Ein had thought Ryo was just an ordinary wizard but discovered he has many talents. After that, Ryo asks Ein not to overexert himself because his fighting style is very exhausting, and the most important thing is to build his physical ability. He advises him to run every day because continuous running will improve his fitness. He says when I was traveling with Abel, he would wake up early and train intensely. Ein promises him that he will push himself in training to raise his level and strength. The next day, Ryo doesn't go to the labyrinth because he has other plans. He goes to the school to study chemistry, wishing to get many books from the library to learn from them. When Ryo goes out, he is surprised that an eclipse is happening. Suddenly, many things begin to disappear. Ryo is confused and doesn't understand what is happening. Everything around him becomes strange. Suddenly, a powerful fire attack hits him from behind, but he manages to block it at the last moment. After that, a girl appears in the form of a demoness. She is surprised that he managed to block her attack and decides to eliminate him immediately. Ryo understands that the one in front of him is a demoness and is surprised by her terrifyingly great power, to the point that he decides to flee from her immediately. But she gives him no chance and attacks him. However, Ryo creates an ice barrier and barely blocks her attack. She attacks him a third time and Ryo dodges it with difficulty. The girl notices that Ryo is wearing the robe of the Fairy King and is surprised how he got it. She decides to get rid of him and cut him in half. She attacks Ruder and Ryo blocks all her strike. He attacks her with his icy magical power, but she manages to dodge his attacks. The fight continues between them and is very evenly matched. Ryo understands that if he keeps defending, he won't be able to defeat her. He also notices that her attacks aren't as strong as her master's. The demoness is surprised by the great power Ryo has and that he can use spells at great speed. She wants to know who this boy exactly is. She attacks him at great speed, and all Ryo does is keep blocking her attacks with his sword. After that, Ryo uses ice arrows and attacks her, but the demoness uses her fire magic and creates a barrier to block all of Ryo's attacks. But Ryo doesn't give up and continues his icy magical assault. The demoness then shatters the ground and creates a barrier in front of and behind her to protect herself from Ryo's attack. But Ryo literally had her surrounded from every direction and managed to wound her in the face and arm. He took advantage of this opportunity to attack and kill her, but the demoness attacked at great speed, blocked his attack, and surprised Ryo by having a healing ability, managing to heal her injuries. After that, she threw Ryo far away and summoned fire magic to finish him off, but she is surprised by raindrops falling from above her. As soon as the raindrops touched her face, she felt a very strong burn. After that, she is annoyed that she can't continue the fight because the eclipse is ending. She says to him, "I don't remember the last time I enjoyed a fight like this." She asks his name and tells him her name is Leonora. She is surprised that Rio knew she was a demoness and had thought he should have died early on, but she knew he wasn't the type to die easily and that he was very strong. She says to him, "Don't worry, I will return to you again. I won't leave you. You are now my target and no one will kill you but me." She promises him that next time she will be stronger and that he won't escape her grasp even once. When she disappears, Rio feels extreme exhaustion and fatigue. After that, he goes to sell the magic stones from the wyverns he killed. He didn't expect to get so much money and is excited to buy the chemistry books he saw in the library last time. On his way, he sees from the window a group bullying his friends, who look tired after leaving the labyrinth. The bully says to them, "Weaklings like you don't deserve to enter the magical labyrinth." He was protected by the people around him, but Rio, from behind them, uses his magical ability and hits his colleagues. He says to him, "Then show us your bravery. What will you do now that you're alone?" The bully gets angry and charges at Rio to hit him, but Rio hits him with the hilt of his sword, knocking him to the ground. After that, they go to relax a bit, and one of his colleagues uses healing magic to treat his injury. Rio tells them everything about his fight against the demoness. They are surprised that he managed to avoid a fatal blow like that. Rio begins to think about the demoness and the strange eclipse that suddenly happened in the city, saying, "I'm sure she isn't alone, and there's someone behind her. But now the most important thing is that I need to rest and relax." The next day, we see Otto, Ammon, and Nils returning to enter the dungeon. After defeating an inverted goblin on the 5th floor, Nils suggests they return home today. Even though they didn't stay long inside, the goblin with a scythe shouldn't have appeared on the 5th floor at all, so he feels something strange and that there is a strong monster. As for Rio, he is now outside the city because the fight with Leonora made him realize he needs to improve himself, especially in speed, since they were very evenly matched. But Leonora was faster in movement thanks to her air magic. He wants to work on his movement speed better, but Rio doesn't know how to use air magic, so he needs an alternative, and the best spell he can use is the water jet, which he uses for speed underwater. But he has never tried it on land, so he isn't sure how to do it. His first attempt, he freezes some ice on the ground and summons water jets from his back, but his body only moves a little. The attempt fails. Rio decides next time to increase the number of jets, but for now he decides to go to the library and learn more about chemistry and demons at the same time. At that time, Lynn is searching every magic book she can find, looking for anything similar to the huge spell Abel said he saw Rio using because the forbidden books don't mention anything about it at all. If Rio really did it, then Rio is the owner of the spell and its inventor, and that requires a huge amount of mana, so it's hard for her to believe he did it so easily. As she puts the book back, Sarah enters and asks what she's doing here. Lynn explains she was looking for a spell in the books but didn't find what she was looking for. Sarah says she is sorry and wishes she could help, but she is returning from a mission in the capital and is late for an important meeting. At the guild, the guys go to Nina's office to submit their exploration report for today. Nina is surprised they returned early because they usually stay longer in the dungeon. Otto tells her there is a reason for their early return and shows her the magic stone of the Scythe Goblin they defeated. Chauffeur. After examining it, Nina confirms it is indeed the Scythe Goblin, which is completely unnatural on the 5th floor. She quickly goes to report to the Guildmaster and thanks them for the information. The Guildmaster is also shocked because the Scythe Goblin shouldn't appear before the 10th floor, meaning something is wrong in the dungeon. He asks Nina about the strong teams still inside. They were Abel's team, the Crimson Blade team, and the White Platoon team. He asks her to summon them to inform them himself. Shortly after, Abel and the others arrive, but Abel isn't happy because he heard the White Platoon is coming, and he can't stand their leader. As soon as he arrives, he sees the White Platoon leader, Phillips, sitting and greets him coldly. After everyone gathers, the Guildmaster tells them he wants them to investigate a strange phenomenon in the dungeon, the appearance of a Scythe Goblin on the 5th floor. Abel asks if he is sure, and the guildmaster confirms he has evidence, which is why he wants to send them to investigate it, because the possibility of a great tide is approaching. The last time it happened was about 10 years ago, which is why he considers the possibility it might happen soon. The task is only exploration, not combat. If they find evidence, they should return immediately and report to him, at which point he will close the dungeon with double walls. The two agree, and the time is set for tomorrow morning. The next day, Ryo wakes up early to go to the Northern Library to learn about chemistry. Otto says that those ranked D and above can access it, which isn't a problem, but the forbidden books are for rank B and above, so he won't be able to reach them yet. Shortly after, Ryo arrives at the Northern Library and finds the collection of books here larger than the Southern Library. The place is so huge that he will likely need help to find the books he's looking for. After that, they gather in front of the dungeon to prepare for the investigation. But before the guildmaster opens the door, he stops them and says he has a very bad and strange feeling. He asks Lynn to use her air magic to scan the first floor of the dungeon before they enter. When she does, she finds more than 100 monsters standing at the entrance. This means the great tide has indeed begun. The guildmaster declares a state of emergency and requests all available adventurers to come to the dungeon immediately and prepare for battle, because they will need all the help they can get. At the same time, in the library, Sarah finds Ryo by himself and is very happy to see him again. She asks what brings him to the library today. He was about to reply that he came to research demons, but remembers it would sound strange, so he changes his speech and says he came to learn about chemistry. Sarah is surprised because chemistry is a very difficult field. Ryo says his goal is to one day be able to build a golem, but he tells her he is in no hurry because building a golem is a huge achievement. Unfortunately, as far as Sarah knows, there are no books about its manufacture here, but she tells him she knows where to find books to start his journey in chemistry and offers to show him herself because she knows the library well. As they walk, Sarah asks if he likes reading. He says he loves it, but it's been a long time since he touched a book and hasn't had many opportunities to read. Sarah laughs and says his way of speaking makes her feel he hasn't seen books in years, which is probably true, but he doesn't like to explain much, so he changes the subject and says, "This is the first time I've seen an elf living with humans." Sarah admits that it's rare to find an elf living among humans. While Ryo and Sarah are talking and chatting, we find all the dungeon gates have been sealed and all the adventurers are distributed on the walls, preparing for the coming attack. It doesn't take long for the main gates to explode, and a horde of goblins begins to pour out. The adventurers immediately begin their attack, using the largest number of fireballs in the assault. The battle is literally a battle of attrition. Any injured person is immediately treated and returns to fight, but with the huge number of goblins, the guildmaster begins to worry that they might not be able to finish them off. Phillips tells his team members to conserve their energy, and Abel warns him not to use too much so he doesn't run out early. Unfortunately, the arrows are about to run out, and Abel doesn't know how long they can hold out. Shortly after, Nils arrives with some adventurers and all the arrows they could find, which will help them repel the goblins. But Nils also brings a message from the guildmaster. After they finish off the small goblins, the Crimson Blade and the White Platoon must face the boss when it emerges. After hours, the ordinary goblins are almost finished and the boss is about to appear. The guildmaster gives the signal for the two factions to advance and attack. Everyone jumps onto the wall, and Lynn uses her magic to let them descend safely, but there are still some goblins below, so Abel and Phillips quickly finish them off. After that, they focus on a huge goblin leader emerging from the dungeon, but the surprise is that he isn't alone. 3 appear, meaning the king himself is near, so the battle must end quickly. Abel says that he and Phillips will take 2 and Rhea and Lynn will take the 3rd. The plan is clear to them. Everyone launches into the fight. Abel feints one and cuts off its arm, noticing that defeating them will be difficult. But suddenly, he glimpses inside the dungeon and shouts for everyone to get to the ground immediately. At that moment, a very powerful strike comes out and cuts the 3 in half. We learn that the one who did this is the Goblin King himself, and it's clear he won't be like the others. Abel and Phillips attack him quickly to surprise him. We see Phillips attacking him and trying to stab him, but the goblin manages to block his strike. Phillips is forced to retreat, but before he can steady himself, it attacks him and uses a shadow technique, dodging its strike and stabbing it in the chest. The stab isn't enough to kill it, and Abel, who wasn't expecting it, moves in to finish it off alone, but he calls for Lynn, who is charging an air bullet spell. As soon as Abel moves away, Lynn fires her air bullet spell and literally finishes it off. After that, we see them starting a big celebration and everyone is happy. Rio comes to them, surprised and not knowing what is happening here. The scene shifts and we see the guildmaster, who is sad and says, "I wanted to celebrate with them, but unfortunately many reports must be submitted to the capital and the regional lord, and also funding requests to deal with the resource surplus, compensation claim papers, and also an evaluation of the adventurers who participated. He also must look at plans for repairing and compensating the facilities and properties affected during the fighting, and he must study the entire budget. On top of all that, a group of researchers will come from the royal capital to study what happened. Even though the dungeon is closed for a full month, we return to the celebration and see them very happy, explaining the greatness of what Abel did when he was fighting, saying how strong an adventurer he is and how he managed to thrust his sword into the Goblin King. They say that even though he was fighting the Goblin King, he gave the signal to Lyn to use her wind bullets and help him in the fight. They say that Lyn used the strongest wind spell, and Abel was the only one who could dodge it, and they don't know how he did it. At that moment, the legend they were talking about earlier arrives, and they welcome him greatly. He says to them, "My complete shadow sword technique allows me to dodge any long-range attack, even magic." They welcome him warmly and say that they also did good work in the battle. At that time, the rest of the group arrives. They were looking for him everywhere and were sure he was with Rio. One of the team girls asks Rio, "Can you make an ice wall in the air?" He replies, "Yes," and tells her the maximum is about 40 meters, but it isn't as easy as she thinks and takes a long time to master. She says to him, "You are great because most people can't do that at all," and tells him he is very skilled and can use original spells. He replies, "Yes, because I make my spells according to my personal preference and everyone has their own style." Then he says, "Now let's go eat before the food runs out." The next morning, we see Rio's friends at the guild looking for a quest, but unfortunately they don't find anything. At that moment, Rio arrives and says to them, "Shouldn't you three be working?" One of them replies, "Impossible because the dungeon is closed. We thought about taking gathering quests above ground, but due to the high flow in recent days, buyers have started withdrawing their usual orders." They say, "Rio, did you come to take a quest like us?" He says, "No, I'm looking for raw materials to practice alchemy." One of them says, "You mean magical copper ore?" and tells him it's very expensive. Rentired from the general store is that a small piece, about enough for a fist, costs about 50 gold coins. After that, he offers to employ them since they are idle, saying, "If you can find me magical copper ore that exists outside the dungeon, I will be very, very happy." He says he will employ them and each will get 4 gold coins. They are of course surprised because the salary is huge and something unexpected. He says, "I will pay you even if you don't find anything, and I will also buy any piece of magical copper ore you find for 25 gold coins. The only condition is that you return safely and no one is injured." Of course they agree without hesitation and say to him, "Will you pay this large amount?" He says, "Or even more than that." He tells them to consider this work outside the guild's framework and not to tell anyone about it. After that, we see Rio hearing a loud argument. He looks out the window and finds a group of knights holding a girl and wanting to assault her. But one guy is trying to defend her. One of the knights draws his sword and points it at his face, saying, "We won't kill you, but we will teach you manners." He runs to hit him with the sword. He falls to the ground and can't get up. He asks him, "What did you do exactly?" The young man says, "I didn't do anything," and tries to get up again but falls again. Suddenly, the adventurer Phillips appears and immediately confronts them, saying, "What are you doing? Kingdom Knights cannot tarnish its reputation." The knight replies, "You are just an adventurer, and I will expel you and your guild leader." Phillips says, "You are supposed to be a kingdom knight and must act like a respectable knight. I know I'm an adventurer, but I am also from a noble family here in the kingdom," and begins to introduce himself. Of course, when they recognize him, they get scared and immediately run away, especially after they learned his father is the former commander of the kingdom's knights. After that, Phillips looks at Rio's window and finds him waving to him. He says to him, "Rio, you've become the white platoon leader." Philip says, "Abel told me a lot about you and said you possess a unique and rare magical skill." We learn that Rio is the one who froze the knight's leg when he decided to attack the young man to hit him. And after that, Phillips's assistant comes and tells them they must leave. So Phillips apologizes to Rio and says they will continue their talk later and leaves him. Rio keeps looking at them for a while, knowing they are very strong but not understanding how Phillips works as an adventurer, even though his father is the commander of the Royal Knight. Rio was having dinner when suddenly Abel comes and says he isn't used to seeing him having dinner alone. Rio replies, "I won't invite you to dinner even if you sit next to me." Abel says, "Stop being stingy. I know you are rich and have a lot of money, and I wish you would invite me now." Oddest. After that, he orders his favorite food. Rio is surprised Abel is alone, which isn't his habit, so Rio says, "I know why you came alone. You plan to play dice after eating." Abel immediately falls silent and says, "Please don't expose." Rio says, I wonder who the lucky one is that you're going to meet after you finish eating with me. Abel is shocked and says, I know you love Lynn, but she doesn't love me. She loves my friend Bowen. Ryo is surprised and says, then why are you alone now? Abel says, I need your help. After that, he says one of the investigators sent to Leon is an old acquaintance of his, but he brought a group of Kingdom Knights as guards, and some of them are corrupt. He said he went for a walk alone at night and must return him before he causes problems. Ryo stops and notices some masked adventurers talking about the city and the dungeon. He says to Abel, let's follow them and watch them because I'm very suspicious of them. Indeed, as soon as they follow them, we see the masked men were luring them. One of them attacks Ryo, but he easily blocks his attack. Then he uses his ice magic and manages to hit them all. After searching them, he notices they have a chemical tool. Ryo offers to take it, but he refuses. After searching them, they learn they are adventurers from rank C, and also that they are from Jequilier, the capital of Handelo, and are surprised what brought them here, so they decide to hand them over to the city guards to interrogate them. The scene shifts and we see Phillips walking alone. We see the guards he humiliated are upset with him and are coming after him to kill him. But suddenly something strange happens. The guards can't move from their spots and are standing like statues. We learn the one who did this is Phillips's assistant. After that, we see her use a fire spell and set them on fire, finishing them all off. After that, we see the guild master yelling at the delegation saying, when you first came, you seized the guild's food stores, and you opened the dungeon today for your inspections, and you also want adventurers to protect you. Cliff says to him, His Majesty the King appointed Count Herland as Minister of Internal Affairs and head of this research mission, and he in turn gave us full authority over the team, and we are present on site, and this is mentioned in the decree you read. Cliff then begins to explain the meaning of full authority, but the old man cuts him off and apologizes about the food, saying he will try to get supplies from neighboring cities. Cliff says, we might have solved the supply problem, but unfortunately, I can't go back on the decision to open the dungeon. The guild master agrees to open the dungeon but says on one condition. If anything happens, the adventurers won't bear responsibility, and if this condition doesn't please you, the dungeon will remain closed. Cliff is very annoyed by the guild master's tone, but the old man says there is no problem. They are willing to hire the adventurers at a higher salary than their usual salaries. The guild master says there is no problem, but you must note that after the great tide that happened, the dungeon has become much more dangerous than before. After that, we see Ryo standing in front of Abel's faction headquarters, and as soon as he decides to enter, a girl suddenly comes, scared, and asks Ryo if he is an adventurer because she wants to go to the Adventurers Guild with an important message that must be delivered immediately. Ryo agrees to help her, and they go to Abel and tell them the message is from Master Hilarium in the capital, and he is happy she managed to deliver the message. Abel says to Ryo the message says they are requesting us to support the royal mages in their investigation inside the dungeon. He says, I'm sure the senior officials who sent them are planning something. He explains the reason the dungeon is closed after a major catastrophe is that many years ago, an A-rank team didn't return from it, and this team wasn't just any team. Their leader was so strong he was classified as S rank, and yet they couldn't return, meaning no one knows what happens inside the dungeon after the great tide. After that, the young girl thanks Ryo for helping her deliver the message. We see Lynn asks the girl named Natalie and says to her, have you ever heard of a spell that creates an ice wall far from the wizard, and the wall is high in the sky? She says she has never heard of this magic before and is amazed it actually exists. Lynn says to her Ryo, who was here, is very skilled in using this magic. The girl is shocked and says that's impossible. Abel says to them, none of you should think about fighting Ryo one day, because if the four of us fight him, we will lose anyway. If you find yourselves facing him one day, surrender immediately. What I know about Ryo is that he is kind and won't start a fight against you. Buas, he says to Natalie. If you need anything and can't find me, go immediately to Ryo, and you will likely find him in room 10 at the Adventurer's Inn. The scene shifts after that, and we see the adventurers entering the dungeon. The old man in charge of the dungeon tells them that what he has is called a remaining magical energy detector, and it detects any magical energy in the area, and what it detects is sent to the analysis team in the tent. Abel, of course, is impressed by this magical tool and tells them they will only reach the 3rd level today and will move very slowly and cautiously. At night, we see Ryo giving his friends a lot of money, even though they only found 2 pieces, and says the extra money is to cover their costs. At the same time, at the guild, Nina enters Hugh's office and informs him that something wrong happened in the investigation. The team that went down suddenly disappeared after entering, and all communication was cut off. Christopher requests Hugh's attendance to find a solution. Hugh quickly gets up from his desk and tells Nina he is going immediately, but as he leaves, he tells her not to say anything to anyone about the matter until he returns because if the adventurers find out, there will be great chaos. At the same time, Rio is walking inside the library as usual, but can't make any progress in his research because he can't find the books he needs. He wishes Sarah were there because he is sure she knows the locations of these books. And as he is wishing that, she is standing in the aisle next to him. Rio is very happy to see her and goes to her. He explains he is looking for records of eclipses in the tide but doesn't know where to start. Sarah says she will help him because she knows exactly where these records are, and she sees a connection between the eclipse and the tide because before the tide occurs, there was an eclipse 2 days before it, and all of history proves this pattern has repeated several times. She says this research took her a long time to reach this idea, so she is surprised why Rio is suddenly interested in this topic. Rio, of course, can't tell her he fought a demon in the middle of the city during the last eclipse, so he changes the subject and asks her why the magic stones change. She feels he is hiding something but decides to keep quiet for now and explains that the stone's color changes according to the age of the monster it was taken from. Rio knew this information, and it's part of the reason he is interested in the tide topic because according to the reports, all the stones taken from these monsters were transparent. Now people think the monsters are coming from the lower floors during the tide, but the transparency of the stones means the monsters are newly born. Rio remembers that in all the past tides, the stones were also transparent. He is surprised that detailed reports about this are available here, so Sarah says the records are in bad condition, even the librarians don't know about them, but she knows their exact location and can show. At that time, the team inside still can't figure out where they are and aren't even sure if they are still inside the dungeon or in another place. They send the mages to see if any device is working. They tell him the transmission device is working again, meaning the team above can locate them now. The others are happy and think it means someone will come to save them, but Arthur isn't that optimistic. Abel asks him if he is worried about something, so Arthur explains that the air here seems strange. The feeling is similar to the feeling inside the Holy Field spell, which is the strongest defensive barrier and blocks the strongest magical or physical attack. If this place is really like that, then they are trapped inside a barrier that cuts them off from the outside world. Abel begins to understand the danger of the situation and asks Lynn to use her exploration. When she does, she senses the presence of a large group of people about 500 meters away, specifically about 100 humans and 12 strange creatures. This is the information they have now, so they decide to walk in that direction. On the surface, Hugh is informed that the exploration team has been transferred to the 40th floor, and Hugh can't believe his bad luck because even if he gathers all the adventurers in the city, it's impossible for them to reach that deep below. And they still don't know the cause of the transfer. Christopher says the risk at the current time is illogical, so they must wait and hope the team is okay. But when we look at the team, we find them far from safe. Fire is literally raining down on Cliff's team. Some of the mages managed to quickly create armor and defend themselves, but many didn't make it and were burned. Cliff doesn't understand how things turn like this, but is sure of one thing. The creatures attacking match the description of the demons he read about before, and if they are really as strong as the records say, then they are in big trouble. A group of adventurers attacks to capture the demons, but they are cut down in seconds. Abel's team arrives and sees what is happening. It's a real massacre scene. As soon as Rhea looks at the monsters, she understands they are demons, so she warns everyone that they are stronger than any ordinary human. But Arthur says, let's think about that later. The important thing now is to save Cliff's team first, and orders the mages to prepare to attack from the flanks while Cliff and his team are about to collapse. A large number of magical arrows take down 3 demons, and the mages use all their spells with all their strength and manage to break the demons' defense. But there are still a large number of them. Arthur orders them to prepare for a second attack. The demons try to respond with fireballs, but the mages were already prepared with armor, so they attack immediately without stopping. Arthur feels they might win if they continue at this speed, but he knows the mage's energy is limited and will run out before they finish off the demon. At that time, Abel and the others must intervene. Abel draws his sword and looks at the battle. Seeing a demon that looks very dangerous, he orders his team to run behind him in a single row to block the demon's attack until they reach it. When they get close, he starts cutting through the demons and Lynn and Rhea throw spells from a distance. They manage to finish off most of the demons, but Lynn falls because she consumed all her mana, and Rhea's mana is also very low, meaning Abel is alone now against 6 remaining demons. Rhea warns him that the leader there is likely a demonic prince, as the immature version of a demonic lord, and there is no record of anyone but the hero defeating him. So Abel has no choice but to enter the fight. For He manages to cut two with one strike, but this attracts the attention of the demonic prince, who fires an energy beam at Rie and Lin. But Abel jumps and sacrifices himself, throwing them all far away. Now he is facing the prince alone. Abel tries to convince himself he can win one-on-one, but this hope is shattered when the demon suddenly appears in front of him and throws his sword far away. He stands firm but knows inside there is no chance of winning. At that time, Cliff hits the demon with a powerful spell, but it does almost nothing, and worse, the rest of the demons direct their attack at Cliff's group, breaking the armor and burning them all. The situation is getting worse, so Abel decides to use his ultimate skills. As he attacks, he manages to block the demon and perform a surprise move to attack its neck, but the demon saw it and dodges it, hitting him away barely. He manages to stand and the prince approaches to slit his throat. Suddenly, Abel hears the sound of a water drop falling, and at that moment, Rio descends from the ceiling. Rio is happy he caught Abel in the nick of time. Abel thinks he is hallucinating because it's impossible to see Rio here now. Rio says to him, "Many people are worried about you and the others, so you must return as soon as possible, and I will take care of the monster." Abel tries to warn him that this monster is a demonic prince, but Rio thinks he is joking because he killed a demon before, and this demon isn't even close to her strength. And since it's still a young demon, naturally it's still weak. Rio starts walking towards it, and the remaining demons throw fireballs at him, but Rio manages to block them with ice arrows. Rio manages to finish them off before they realize what exactly happened. The demonic prince, when he sees the demons' heads flying in seconds, immediately understands that Rio isn't an easy opponent, so he prepares and draws his sword. Rio also draws his sword and says he will have fun with him and wants to see how his abilities work. Before the battle, we see Natalie had searched the entire city for Rio, and as soon as she finds him, she quickly tells him that Abel and his team are trapped in the dungeon. As soon as Rio hears this, he immediately makes a sled out of ice around Natalie, takes her, and runs with her at high speed to the dungeon entrance because there is no time to wait. When they arrive, Natalie is finished and tells Rio all the details about what happened, so he understands how serious the matter is and is happy she told him. Rio is surprised and doesn't know why Natalie was looking for him specifically. Natalie clarifies that a few days ago when he saw her, he told her if she faces any problem and can't reach him, she should immediately go to Rio because he is the only one she can rely on to solve any problem. Rio is very happy that Abel sees him in this way, but he of course needs to leave now to catch up with them, so he runs to the gate. The adventurers guarding the dungeon try to stop him, but Rio has no time, so he blocks their path with ice walls and enters inside. As soon as he enters, he remembers Natalie said the signal is coming from the 40th floor. But he doesn't have time to go down the normal way, so he uses water jets to bore through the ground and go down, which is what makes him arrive here quickly. We return to the fight and see the demonic prince runs to attack, but his speed was very slow compared to Rio, so Rio calmly moves from his side and cuts off his head with one strike. Abel and the others can't believe Rio managed to finish him off that quickly, but the fight isn't over yet. The demonic prince picks up his head from the ground and puts it back on his body, which was definitely embarrassing for him since Rio blew his brains out with one strike. Rio admits that his regeneration ability will be annoying a bit, but still, there is nothing he can do about it. To prove his control, Rio summons more than 200 water jets around the demonic prince, and before the demon can realize his end is near, Rio literally shreds him into pieces and turns him into dust, with no chance of returning. The battle is finally over. Abel thanks Rio for his help, but Rio replies that this talk is worthless. If Abel really wants to thank him, he should treat him to dinner. At that moment, Arthur introduces himself as an advisor to the Office of the Royal Mages and says to Rio that he is very grateful for saving them, and that without him they would have surely died. But Rio says there is no need for thanks and he would never hesitate to help anyone in trouble. On the contrary, he wishes he had arrived earlier to reduce the number of casualties. Arthur agrees with him that what happened is tragic and says as soon as the mages recover their energy, they will start collecting the bodies of the dead to bury them properly. At that time, Abel asks Rio to help him collect the magic stones from the demons because he wants to use the money to support the families of the people who died. Rio agrees immediately, of course, but says he feels something strange from the moment he arrived. When he fell from the 39th floor, he felt he entered a magical barrier, but after killing the demonic prince, this effect disappeared. Also, when he used his exploration spell on the way, he felt something strange at the stairs. They decide to investigate it on their way out, but first, they gather the magic stones. Arthur for the first time in his life sees a demonic magic stone, and there are no accurate records about it. In another place in the world, we see a group of adventurers standing in front of a sacred magic stone and find a gate has opened, and Leonora, the group's leader, comes out of it. He calls her Demon Lord, but she is very surprised because she doesn't see herself with that title, and she came because she felt a strange energy. But as soon as she hears that the one in front of her is a hero, she gets very excited for a strong fight. The hero raises his sword and says he will kill her today, and she of course welcomes the challenge. But suddenly she discovers he is pathetically weak. A single ordinary strike pierces his chest, so she is very shocked. She pulls her sword and looks at his team all frozen in terror. Leonora doesn't like killing, so she disappears and appears behind a wizard quickly and tells them to pull themselves together and return to their homes because they won't live a second if they try to kill her, and also warns them to quickly treat the hero because he still has a chance to live. The team does the right thing and starts treating him, and Leonora goes to the magic gem they used for the summoning and finds it interesting, so she takes it with her. The hero calls her Demon Lord, but she gets annoyed and says to them, "I am not the Demon Lord." They of course don't believe how she has such great power and isn't the Demon Lord. Leonora says to them, "You can defeat the real Demon Lord, but I am much stronger than him." The hero is shocked and can't understand how there are creatures stronger than the Demon Lord, but Leonora says she met a human with the same strength as her named Rio, and describes his strength as 10,000 times stronger than their hero. After that, Leonora disappears, leaving the team in shock. At the same time in the dungeon, Rio and the adventurers are returning to the stairs, and there they find the artifact Arthur had found before, so he decides to take it to the surface for analysis. Indeed, everyone returns to the surface, and the care system for the injured is organized. Nina asks Abel and the others if they are okay and thanks them for their intelligence because she brought Hugh himself is relieved they returned because if they had died, it would have been a catastrophe, but he must confront Rio, so he asks him to explain why he entered the dungeon against the rules. Rio apologizes, but Arthur defends him, saying if he hadn't done that, no one would have returned alive for isn't done. Hugh is surprised, so Arthur takes him to a tent alone and tells him everything that happened about the demons and the demonic prince. Hugh is shocked and can't believe Rio alone destroyed a demonic prince. Arthur explains to him how strong Rio is and tells Hugh they must maintain a good relationship with Rio at any cost, and says they must not reveal the secret of Rio's strength in front of the nobles. The next day, Rio is walking in the city and smells the scent of delicious food. He finds a restaurant selling curry and there he sees Sarah sitting. They are surprised to see each other and sit down to eat. She asks him where he lives. He says, "I live in the guild." She is surprised because that's for beginners, but Rio clarifies that he has a new promotion to rank D when he first joined the guild. After eating, they go out, and Rio asks her why he doesn't see her at the... She explains she has a long contract with the capital and is a sword instructor for the noble's children. During their conversation, she challenges him to a duel, so they go to the training ground. Rio asks her how she knew he uses a sword. She replies that she sensed it from his movement and that it's normal for a wizard to use a combat weapon. She starts attacking at high speed, but he manages to block her attack. When Rio attacks her, he is surprised by her speed and that she can dodge his attacks. The fight continues between them to the amazement of the guards, who can't believe their great speed. Sarah is also very happy because she can't believe anyone can dodge her first attack, and she decides to use all her strength in the fight. She attacks him at legendary speed to the point that Rio can't dodge her attack, and from the strength of her attack, Rio's sword breaks and he surrenders. After the duel, Sarah hugs him enthusiastically because she didn't expect him to have such great talent, but she had to leave because she has an important errand. After bidding her farewell, Rio returns to the guild and meets Hugh, who asks to speak with him. Hugh says, "I know how much you helped us in saving the mission and I am very grateful to you, but the laws say you must be punished, and the punishment will be that you take a mandatory mission, which is that you will go on a guard trip with some merchants to and from a city called Whitench." The next day, Nils approaches Rio and says he has an important request and says his village sent a hunting request a while ago, and he wanted to accept it, but it's made for adventurers from rank D and above, which is why he wants Rio to form a team with him so he can accept the mission. At first, Rio isn't interested in entering a mission because he doesn't need the reward money, but as soon as he hears they will fight goblins, he immediately agrees and changes his mind, seeing it as a chance to let off some steam on some weak monsters. So they all go to the guildmaster's office to tell him they will take the mission. The guildmaster immediately agrees but warns them that two teams have failed at it before. One was from rank A and the second from rank D, but according to the reports, the failure wasn't because of the monsters but because the villagers there refused to cooperate. In short, the matter is that the village doesn't like strangers. Nils can't believe this because he grew up there and knows the people aren't very friendly, but were never aggressive to this extent. He doesn't know why the villagers are behaving this way, and all they said is that they should be very careful because the last team that failed in the mission said they encountered about 30 skeletons and were badly injured, but since Ryo is with them in the team, they likely won't have any problem. And Ryo still has a few days before he goes on the guard mission, meaning he will have enough time to finish this mission and return, so they set out immediately after getting the guild master's approval. After half a day of walking, they reach Nils's village. The village is named Cat, and as soon as they arrive, the villagers welcome Nils warmly with smiles, which shocks Ryo because he was convinced Nils became an adventurer because he was expelled from his village. Nils is upset that Ryo thinks of him that way. It's true he caused some problems in the past, but he doesn't want to talk about it now. He takes them to the elder's house to discuss them. When they arrive, Nils enters first and Bolin is very happy to see him because it's been a year since he left the village, and then he notices the rest of the team standing at the door, so he introduces them as members of his team. They all sit with Bolin to talk about the mission. Bolin is somewhat relieved that Nils and his team are the ones handling the mission now because he understands the village's customs, but Nils asks him, is it true the villagers were uncooperative with the last adventurer team that came? Bolin says he will explain what happened and says a while ago skeletons started appearing at the edges of the eastern forest. At first they were few, but then they became very numerous, so he sent a request for the first team that came tried to solve the skeleton problem, but unfortunately they took the fight to a place they weren't supposed to go to. Nils is shocked and asks, did they go to the depths of the eastern forest? Because he can understand the villagers' anger if that happened. Bolin admits the villagers were a bit too angry with the adventurers, especially since they were struggling for their lives. But everyone was very worried that many people had died in that part of the forest. At that time, Nils understands that the rest of the team doesn't understand what he and Bolin are talking about, so he says the matter is related to a great secret of the village, and he can't explain details unless he gets permission from the elders, so he asks them to be patient for a while. In the meantime, he says, come relax a bit at my house with my sisters. When they sit there, they talk with his sisters. Nils is happy that Nils has returned with people he can trust in, and says as long as they are the ones handling the hunting, no one from the village will object at all. The previous group ignored the village's customs and broke into the forest alone, which is why none of the villagers helped them, but Ryo and the others are different. At that time, Nils returns from the council meeting and says they have permission to start the hunting, and suggests they start with the goblins in the morning and then finish with the skeletons later. He got permission to explain the village's secret to them, but they must promise not to tell anyone, and everyone agrees. So Nils says to them, there are two distinctive things in the village. The first is that they have a guardian monster in the eastern forest. This shocks everyone because they didn't know the village is protected by a creature like that. Ryo is very impressed and wishes this monster would turn out to be evil, so he has an excuse to kill it. Nils also says the second thing is the shrine, but the thing sitting with them cuts them off and says she will explain this matter tomorrow. The next day, the group goes out to the forest and Bolin follows them to the last place the goblins were. The problem is that children usually play here, and we all know what goblins do with children. At that time, Ryo senses a group of goblins coming towards them, so he warns everyone to get ready. There were about 10 of them. Nils suggests they kill them all and leave one to escape so they can find their place. Ryo immediately agrees and they enter hiding places, waiting to ambush them. As soon as the goblins get close, Ryo uses his ice spell on them. We see the goblins are walking normally and suddenly one of them freezes and his head explodes. The rest run away quickly and scared, and Ryo and the team run after them and manage to find their place. The goblin that escaped was frantically explaining how his team froze and one of them had his head exploded, and a moment later he freezes too. The remaining goblins see Ryo and his companions, and after what they heard from the patrol they don't want to mess with them, so they start running and being afraid of them, but Ryo wasn't planning to let anyone go. He freezes them all at once. Nils and Eamon enter and start crushing them. When they reach the cave entrance they hear something huge coming and suddenly the goblin chief appears in their faces. The situation is terrifying because they can't defeat him alone, but luckily Ryo is of course with. He uses a stronger version of his ice spell and makes their chief fall to the ground, then asks Nils to finish him off. The feeling that Ryo is with them in the fight makes them very happy and unafraid. After they finish him off they are happy with the magic stone they took from the goblin chief because it's worth a lot. They return to the village, and after that they are introduced to the village elder. As soon as she hears they killed the goblin chief, she asks them to come with her to meet the guardian monster. They reach the cave, and Ryo is very excited to meet the guardian monster, but is shocked when he finds the monster isn't evil, meaning there will be no fight between them. The monster looks at the group normally, but as soon as he sees Ryo, his personality changes. He introduces himself to Ryo as in Curson, and this shocks Nils and Bolin, because the monster never told anyone his name before. He himself said he doesn't tell his name to humans because they never pronounce it correctly, but he felt Ryo's aura, which is why he introduced himself. Ryo tells him his name is Ryo. He is surprised how a guardian monster is dealing with him with such kindness, so he clarifies that he is half genie and half monster, and Ryo's presence with him makes him feel calm. Ryo remembers that Sarah told him the Fairy King also likes him, so he starts asking if there is something in his body that makes Jennies feel this way. Anyway, the guardian monster explains to them that there are about 30 skeletons around the shrine, and one is trapped inside putting pressure on a seal until he finishes off the 30 skeletons outside, and then he will let it out so they can finish it off. The group goes to the shrine. Otto uses light magic to dispel the skeletons outside, and then they open the door and find a large skeleton trapped inside. Ryo makes ice hammers for Nils and Ammon, and then gives a signal to the guardian monster to release it. As soon as it comes out, it attacks them. Ryo makes an icy floor that makes it slip, and Nils and Ammon attack. The skeleton tries to escape, but the ice Ryo made is very slippery, so it falls again. Nils takes advantage of the opportunity and breaks its neck in half. They enter the shrine and find a statue of an earth sorcerer, but the gem in it is cracked. Nina concludes this is why the monsters appeared suddenly, so she makes a new seal to prevent this from happening again, and with that, the mission is complete. Ryo and the others bid farewell to the villagers and start their return journey. On the way back, Nils and Otto notice that it's been almost a year since they became adventurers, meaning they can't stay in the guild dormitory anymore, so they decide to buy a house and ask Ryo and Ammon to live with them. Ammon agrees, but Ryo asks for time to think. At the same time in the city, Hugh asks Abel to represent him at a festival in Whitenge since Phillips is busy in the Empire. He makes sure the leader of the mage team will attend the festival with her assistant, the fire mage Oscar. And we learn that Ryo's travel to be a guard for the merchant is also there in the city of Whitenge, and by coincidence, Nils, Otto, and Ammon are assigned to the same merchant guard mission, so they gather with Ryo. As soon as they arrive, the merchant thanks them and says his work will last 10 days, and after that, he will return with them. During this time, the team is free to do what they want, so they are very happy and go to try the foods. The next day, the imperial family arrives and White nears a slight delay. Oscar is annoyed by the waiting but eventually gives in. At night, there is a party attended by Prince Conrad and Princess Fiona. Conrad apologizes to his sister and leaves her to go sleep. She is happy to escape the party because she hates such gatherings and prefers training more. Her maid Mary tells her she is the best at using magic and the sword. The day after, Ryo and his companions enjoy the festival greatly. They see Abel sitting next to the princess and looking nervous. Rhea explains that Abel is representing the guild. At that moment, he feels a very strong air barrier protecting the guests. Rhea says Princess Fiona is the leader of the Imperial Magic Corps, and this is her assistant, Oscar Helf. Ryo's very impressed by the name and asks for some information about him. Rhea says he can burn an entire army in a second and killed a wyvern with one strike, warning them to stay away from him. But 10 seconds later, Ryo accidentally bumps into him and walks away normally. Oscar feels something strange about Ryo but can't determine what it is. Before he can think, he is called because they have a lot of work left, and this work is to tour the festival and buy food from all the stalls. At the palace, Prince Conrad feels Ryo resembles someone he knows. They talk a bit about the princess and Oscar, and he tells him that Princess Fiona caught his attention a while ago. Conrad laughs and asks him, "Are you impressed by her?" But Abel meant he is more interested in the presence of Oscar the Hellfire at a festival considered normal, and sees the presence of the Empire's strongest military weapon here without a reason as strange, and that something unnatural is happening. Conrad says he isn't allowed to talk about such topics and leaves him. A little later, Fiona returns to her room and sits on the bed tired, but after moments, someone knocks on the door, and it turns out to be Gergen and Oscar bringing the food they bought. Then he heats the food with his magic. She calls him master then, but he thinks she shouldn't keep calling him that because he is considered her subordinate, not her superior, but Fiona replies that Mary and Gergen know about their relationship, so there is no problem at all. The next day, the festival continues, and Ryo and his group are extremely happy. They decide to enter an archery contest. Ammon tries his luck first but comes out a complete failure and doesn't hit any target. After that, Otto enters and also comes out a failure. Like Ryo is happy in watching them but notices Nils didn't enter the contest, so he asks him why. Nils says he has never held a bow in his life, so he knows he won't hit any target. Hearing this, he smiles. Rhea says to him, "It's not nice to laugh at people," so Abel apologizes and says he isn't laughing at him. He remembered himself in the past when he was very weak at archery until he came. When it's Abel's turn, he shoots the first arrow and hits the target right in the center and walks away happy. But his happiness doesn't last long because he had promised Rie he would spend the day with her and completely forgot. At the same time, in the city of Leon, Sarah is looking for Rio everywhere. She goes to the usual places and doesn't find him, so she decides to go to the guild to ask about him. She finds Nina there, and Nina is surprised it's the first time she sees Sarah at the guild. Sarah explains she has been looking for him for a few days and can't find him, so she thought Nina might know where he is. Nina says Rio is traveling on a mission outside the city. Sarah asks her how long he will be absent. Nina says she isn't sure, but at least. At the same time, in Whitench, Rio is watching the boat races because Nils and Ammon are participating, but Dan is also there and still has big problems with Nils. So the matter is exciting. As soon as the race starts, Nils and Dan start hitting each other with oars and forget they are in a race. Even though they break their oars, they take their teammates' oars and break them too, and keep hitting each other with their hands. The other competitors pass them all, but the two keep hitting each other until the boats capsize. They lose the race but get a prize for making the audience laugh a lot with their bickering, and they start arguing over the prize itself. Rio and the others leave Nils to solve his problem and go to see the new boat. After that, Hugh arrives in Whitench and tells them about the boat, saying it works with magic stones and alchemy and uses wind and water to move, and he hasn't seen it working yet, but its cost was very high. After that, Rio, Ammon, and Otto go to a weapons shop. Otto wants a new weapon to be useful since he is a failure with the bow. The shop owner suggests a new automatic bow that can shoot arrows very quickly without needing great accuracy. That same night, a second party is held at the palace and Abel is asked to represent the guild master, so he enters the party a bit worried because they didn't let anyone enter with any weapon, but he is reassured by the presence of the barrier. But in the barrier room, one of the technicians notices there is a problem. The entire system is about to collapse, and before he can call someone to fix it, he is attacked by a mysterious group, and as soon as the barrier falls, the entire party is attacked. We go to a flashback of Oscar's childhood. By anime standards, his life was fine, and he spent his days learning at the village blacksmiths, and he was treated well there. We learn his father and mother are poor people of modest means. We learn that Oscar as a child was very distinctive because his hair was light-colored and he possesses fire magic. After that, he and the blacksmith finish a set of swords and all of them turn out well, and Oscar is very happy. After that, Oscar's father passes by there by chance and asks the blacksmith how things are going. The blacksmith keeps thanking Oscar and says he is learning very well and he is the one controlling the furnace's temp. We learn the blacksmith had prepared a small gift for him to thank him for his help. So he takes one of the swords he made and gives it to him. The sword was made specially to be so light that a child could use it, so it's supposed to be a training weapon suitable until Oscar grows enough to hold a real sword. A few days later, the villagers go out hunting, and after they hit a wild boar with dozens of arrows, all the people start celebrating. Everyone praises Oscar because he did an excellent job, leaving the boar with a few strikes even though it was his first time in real hunting. That night, the whole village gathers for a feast and is very happy, but the happiness doesn't last because shortly after, the villagers discover that a gang of bandits has been watching their village for a few days, and that means they are planning to attack the village in the coming days, and that alone wouldn't be a big problem. But from what they learned, the gang is about 50 people, which is a very large number. They think quickly to escape before the attack, but they have no place to go, so the only choice before them is to stay and fight. The night after that, all the villagers capable of fighting gather at the village wall, waiting for the attack that will surely come at any moment. Indeed, after minutes, the entire village is surrounded. One of the bandits approaches the wall to look inside, but he is immediately hit by an arrow from above the wall, and here the battle officially begins. All the villagers start firing a barrage of arrows at the gang. The gang leader orders his men to attack quickly to stop the arrow rain. Oscar's father feels things will go badly soon, so he asks Oscar to hide in a house with his mother until the situation is safe, and tells him his father will try to stop them as long as possible. But that wasn't easy because the gang leader was moving at great speed and at the peak of his strength, running through the forest while dodging dozens of arrows at the same time. After that, he jumps 10 meters forward above the wall and cuts down one of the archers standing there, and at that moment, everyone knows the battle is almost over. The gang leader manages to open the gate after finishing off everyone on the wall, and the rest of the gang enter the town and begin their attack. During the raid, the gang leader breaks down the door of the house where Oscar is hiding with his mother. His mother tries to protect him as best she can, but the gang leader easily grabs her spear and stabs her in the neck without any thought, right in front of Oscar's eyes. Oscar can't believe what he saw, and his anger makes him throw a fireball at the gang leader. At first I was saying why he didn't use fire from the start, but when I saw the gang leader brushing it off like it was trivial, It was clear Oscar's fire magic is nothing more than a match. When the fire doesn't yield results, Oscar charges to stab him, but the gang leader kicks him, knocking him to the ground. Just as the gang leader is about to finish him off, Oscar's father intervenes and strikes him, immediately checking on his son. At that time in the city, Oscar and the others are sitting eating in a stall, but he refuses to eat anything to stay at full energy. But the others see no need to worry because the party place is protected by a strong wind barrier. At the same moment, everyone at the party is being attacked and the garden is set on fire. Fiona survives the first explosion but doesn't understand who would do such a thing, and suddenly remembers her brother must have been in the middle and is injured. She keeps searching until she finds Conrad injured next to the rubble. She creates a barrier and starts healing him with her magic. At that time, Conrad wakes up and tells her to stop. He appreciates that she wants to save him, but they are still in danger, and she must save her energy. He also says he can move on his own now, but is surprised that all the nobles are being killed, and no one has come out to ask for help. So he concludes then that the people who attacked have cordoned off the entire place. He asks her if she has a way to communicate with Oscar and the others, and they had indeed prepared a distress signal for emergencies, but she is afraid if she uses it now, the attackers will know their location. Conrad says it's the only solution, so Fiona raises her hands and throws a magical signal into the sky. As soon as Oscar sees it, he and the others understand something is wrong and run to save her. Rio also sees the signal but thinks it's fireworks. Fiona is confident Oscar is on his way now, and Conrad feels a bit relieved because as soon as he arrives, they will be okay, but they must hold out until he arrives. So he asks her if she is ready to fight, and the attackers run towards them. Conrad uses earth magic and stabs them from below, and Fiona uses fire magic and kills the last one. Suddenly, they hear someone chanting a spell. They look around and don't see anyone, but suddenly they find a very powerful attack, so Conrad asks her to create a barrier to block the attack, and she actually manages to block it, but the one attacking them doesn't stop attacking, and suddenly Fiona finds the ground under Conrad turning red and realizes the nature of the new attack, so she immediately pushes Conrad away so he doesn't get her. At that moment, Oscar arrives and sees her flying in the air, and the scene brings back memories of the people he lost before, but he refuses to let Fiona be one of them. He runs quickly to save. Down in the room, Ammon, Nils, and Otto are playing near the water, and suddenly they see Fiona falling from the sky. Nils runs to catch her and manages to grab her at the last moment before she falls. After minutes, two assassins appear to finish her off, but Ammon, Nils, and Otto manage to take down these assassins even though they are from range. Moments later, Oscar arrives, and when he sees Fiona unconscious, he loses his mind, thinking they are the ones who did this to her, and is preparing to burn them. After that, we see Abel arriving at the explosion site and is shocked he didn't hear anything, learning the sound dampening devices are the reason. We return to Rio, who is thinking again and saying that this world has no gunpowder or bullets, and what he saw must be related to magic, and he starts suspecting the matter. We return to Oscar, who is upset with Rio's friends and says to them, "Leave the princess now immediately." Of course they are suspicious of him and think he is one of the gang that attacked them a while ago. After that, Oscar uses fire magic, but Otto immediately creates a barrier and blocks it. Because of Oscar's powerful fire magic, Otto feels extreme exhaustion, and after that Oscar attacks again, and when Otto creates the barrier, unfortunately the barrier breaks and they are injured all three. After that, Oscar prepares to finish them off with fire magic again, but at the last moment, Rio arrives and blocks his attack. Rio then gets angry at Oscar and says, "What are you doing to my friends?" So he says don't interfere and prepares to attack his friends and kill them, but Rio again blocks the attack. So Oscar gets annoyed and decides to attack him with fire magic. But Rio immediately creates an ice barrier and blocks his attack, and Oscar is surprised by Ra's great strength. Rio gets provoked and says, "Is this all you've got?" and says, "It's my turn to attack," and Oscar is surprised by ice arrows above him, but immediately Oscar creates a whirlwind of fire and melts all the arrows. Suddenly Oscar finds an ice ball falling above him and the ball breaks, and Rio comes out of it and draws his sword and attacks him at high speed, so Oscar also draws his sword and blocks his strike. After that, each prepares to bring out his strongest power and attack with it, but Abel arrives at the last moment and stops them, saying there is a misunderstanding and they shouldn't fight each other. But Rio doesn't care about anything Abel says and insists on killing Oscar because he hurt his friends. So he says he didn't mean to hurt them because he thought they were enemies and hurt the princess. So Rio says, "Your justifications won't help anything, and if he wants the princess, he should prepare for me to finish her off first and freeze her, and then give her to him." And of course, when Oscar hears that the princess will be harmed, he gets angry and uses strong fire magic and makes fire spears in the sky attack Rio. But Rio, with all confidence, uses his water gun technique and blocks his attack. Abel intervenes then and says to Rio if he doesn't stop, a great war will break out between them, but still, Rio doesn't care and prepares to attack him, so Abel stands in front of Rio's attack and freezes because of the strength of his magic. So Rio is convinced then that he must stop the attack and forgives Oscar. The next day, Abel meets Ryo and his friends and tells them the princess has woken up and is fine and very happy that you protected her and wants to see you later to thank you. He says to Ryo that Oscar apologizes to you and that he didn't mean to hurt your friends at all and thought they were from the criminals. The next day, Ryo returns to the city of Leon and is sitting in the restaurant, and Sarah is surprised when she finds him back and enters to welcome him and takes him later to the library and says, I got permission for you to access the restricted archives for you to view. Of course, there is a huge amount of information about chemistry and magic that he wants to learn, and she says then there is no time to transfer all this, and she uses a copying spell to quickly summarize the book, and Ryo hears for the first time that there is a magic called copying magic. So Sarah immediately laughs and says there are many things in magic you haven't learned yet. When Ryo leaves the library, he finds a man facing him and asks Ryo to talk to him, so he comes with him later to the restaurant and says, What do you want from me? He says, I'm looking for a house because I want to live alone because I will be busy studying chemistry and magic in the coming period. And honestly, I like to be alone and don't want anyone to be with me. When they go to the real estate agent, there are many houses available, but they can't be sold to anyone below rank B. And there is only one house available outside the city that Ryo can. Ryo agrees to it even if it is far away because he wants to live alone and focus on his experiments and magic. Even though the house is old and shabby, Ryo likes it very much, especially since its space is very large. We see the wizard who met Ryo when he first arrived in this world and says to him, If you think your life will be quiet and you will be able to focus on learning magic and chemistry, I must tell you that you are mistaken, because your confrontation with Oscar the Hellfire Wizard was just the beginning, and there are much more difficult adventures and other things ahead for you. So I wonder what awaits our hero Ryo, which we will find out in the second season, which unfortunately hasn't been released yet until now. So if you are excited for the rest of the events, don't forget to support us with a like and subscribe so that when the second season is released, see you in the next video.